You guys want to know what's going on? I want to know what's going on. I don't know what's going on. That's happened twice this week so far. The beginning of our program starts, and all of a sudden it ends 4 to 6 seconds later. Today it was 4 seconds. The other day it was 6 seconds. I don't know what is going on. All I want to do is say hi, everybody. This is Ron Tyler with the Emergency Management Associates. We're coming to you from the Area Command, 392 miles west of Kitty Hawk Beach, North Carolina. As we've been doing for quite some time now, we're going to start off with the Pledge of Allegiance and the United States National Anthem. I would ask for everybody to please rise. And thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now would you make welcome, straight from Washington, D.C., the United States Army Corps Quartet.
Yeah.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the
Oh yeah! Come on, folks, let them know it. America's finest right there.
America's finest, the United States Army Barbershop Quartet, performing at the Barbershop Quartet Convention in 2015. The host of the Barbershop Corvette, wouldn't I like that? The host of the Barbershop Quartet Convention gave us the Pledge of Allegiance, and we thank them for that. We want to thank all of our armed forces, wherever they might be around the world. Thank you for your service. We want to thank also our allies who help protect us, and we help protect them, and we also are the policemen of the world. God bless you all. Thank you for your service. May God protect you and bless you and bring you home in safety after your tours of duty end. We appreciate you ever, ever so much. It makes us proud to know that we all are with each other. Poet's Dream just gave us a $10 super chat. We appreciate that so much as well. God bless you for that. Folks, we have a huge program planned for you tonight. We've been planning this since actually 3 days ago. I tried to start getting on the air at 55 minutes ago. It's taken me all this time to get YouTube to allow me on the air. Go figure. Ray Spur said a few minutes ago here in the chat, I must have pissed Biden off. Yes, I must have. Let me give you a history of my day today. My phone started ringing at 9 a.m. this morning, and it really has not stopped. The only real call for no one but me was a call from my doctor's office telling me of a minor surgery I have to do on the 21st. Nothing big deal. Anyway, that was the only real call for me. It was people complaining about my show last night. Some people saying what a great job I did. I really appreciate that. All of you that have told me about last night's show. Even though we did not have video, we came away smiling last night. Poet's Dream says, thank you, Ron, for all you do for us. God bless you, sir. Well, God bless you also. God bless all of you. We appreciate you all who represent us here on this show and who also take this message to your families and friends and neighbors. We appreciate that ever so much. God bless you. I had one person tell me yesterday that one of you gave them my program. And they said what a great job I had done, and now they have one of their most favorite programs that they're going to start listening to. So I appreciate that ever so much. You all are having a great effect on this program and on the nations where you reside and the cities and states where you reside. It's because of you all that this channel is growing. We're approaching 2,000 members right now. We're just about 1,687 members right now. I almost thought we'd hit that last week. We didn't. I hope we can hit at least 2,000 within the coming days. That would be nice. Also, I want to remind you that YouTube is unsubscribing people again. I've caught them doing it, and I nailed them at their own game. Unfortunately, they do that. Please check and make sure you're subscribed to this program. It would benefit you and everyone that you are with, whether you're with your families or your friends. Knowing that you're subscribed and being able to get notified when we come on the air is of utmost importance. When you are subscribing or when you resubscribe, make sure you click on that subscribe button, and as soon as you do that, there's a little tiny bell icon in a circle. Click on that little bell circle. There will be a drop down menu of 3 items that are going to come up. Click on the word ALL. Click on the word ALL, all. That should get you notified when we come on the air. Of course, YouTube doesn't even do that half the time. I'm just giving you the wherefores and how-tos to make sure you make it to this program. I want to give you the best idea that you can have to be able to tune into us in this program. Grace for Purpose says it was fun last night. Don't know why there were complaints. I do. I called the administration on the carpet, and I'm going to do that tonight, as you're going to see. Folks, before we get into that though, we have a bunch of earthquakes that I want to tell you about. This one here this morning, early this morning, this is down near Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea. This was a 6.3 magnitude earthquake. I believe it may have been just a 6.5. I don't think it's much more than that. USGS is downgraded to a 6.3. This is just barely off the coast of Mount Victoria down in Papua New Guinea. because this was such a powerful quake. A 6.0 and 6.9 are considered to be very strong earthquakes. Because it was just barely offshore, this is still going to cause some damage over there in Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea. It can't help but do that. Okay? If it's far enough out to sea, the ocean waters absorb the shock waves from the earthquake. But this is close to shore. This is very close to shore. So there's that one down in Papua New Guinea. I've got some more to talk to you about. If we go further east, this is over in the Solomon Islands. Folks, you can't, sometimes you can't cry or laugh when it comes to some of these earthquakes. This is a 5.2 earthquake over in the Solomon Islands. This is on the island itself here. This is on one of the biggest islands in the Solomon Islands. This is a 5.2 large earthquake. No matter what they say, this is a large earthquake, and it will have caused some kind of damage over there in the Solomon Islands. We don't have a treaty right now where we'll get instant information from the Solomon Islands. I don't know why we don't, but we don't. Maybe we'll get some world press that will pass the information on to us about what happened here in the Solomon Islands today. Notice where it's at. Right in the middle between both shores, south and north. This one is going to cause some damage. Okay? And if we can find the information, we'll be passing it on to you. So that's what happened down there in the Solomon Islands. We've had earthquakes literally all over the world, all around the world. I want to start over just east of Kamchatka Peninsula on the Aleutian Island Fault. This, folks, is nothing more than a 4.3 moderate earthquake. It's right on top of the fault. The ocean waters absorbed the shock wave of this quake. It was just a moderate quake. Moderate quakes don't usually cause too much damage. If they're on land, they may knock a picture off the wall or rattle some dishes or knock a souvenir or something off a shelf. That's just about all they'll do. Okay? No big deal. Really. Not a real big deal. Yesterday, I failed to mention a 6.1 over here off the coast of Chile. This was on the West Chile Rise here, off the coast of South America. This was a 6.1 earthquake. A 6.1 earthquake. Notice that we've gotten a lot of sixes down here in the southern hemisphere. A lot of sixes in the southern hemisphere. Now, during the past week, you might remember that I've been watching and paying attention to Detranian. Okay, he has a website where he talks about planetary movements and how the planetary movements cause earthquakes and why they cause earthquakes. Planetary alignments cause earthquakes. About a week ago, he talked about a planetary alignment that would cause an 8.0 earthquake. It did not. We did not get an 8.0 earthquake anywhere around the globe last week. But the planetary alignments that we had could have caused that. And it's not just the planetary alignments, ladies and gentlemen. It's also the solar flares. We've also been getting a lot of solar flares. If you've been noticing your television videos being botched up and bouncing around and interrupted, that is a solar flare. Solar flares could also contribute to earthquakes as well. We've seen that happen. Why? Because radiation filters down from the sun. As it does, that plasma radiation comes out of the sun and heats up our atmosphere within about 48 to 72 hours. It heats up our atmosphere, but it doesn't stop there. The plasma radiation continues down to the surface of the earth and into the crust of the earth. When it gets down there, folks, all that gunk and grime that have been holding that earthquake fault or that tectonic plate, all that gunk and grime and the gravel, the sand, the dirt, the biological materials there that have been holding that plate or that fault in place, when the plasma radiation hits the Earth's crust and goes down deeper into the earth, it heats up those plates. It heats up all that gunk and grime, the biological material, and it allows those plates to more freely move. This is exactly what happens. When it heats that stuff up, it allows those plates and the tectonic faults to move more readily. So that's how that happens. A lot of people talk to me about that over the years. I've talked about this several times here on this program. Before on the last channel I had, and now here as well, several times. I want to make sure that everybody understands why we get tectonic earthquakes, why we have faulting earthquakes, meaning earthquakes on earthquake faults. That's what we're coming to now. We had quite an episode of earthquakes up here in the Pacific Northwest today. We're talking about off the coast of Canada, off the coast of Vancouver, Canada today. Look where this seismic activity is. It's hovering on either side of the Juan de Fuca plate. It's hovering on either side of the Juan de Fuca plate. 17 different earthquakes hit here since early this morning. There have been 6 of those 17 earthquakes. They're 4.4s, 4.5s, and 4.7s. Yes, there are a bunch of 3s, and there is even a 1.67 tremor there. But 17 earthquakes hit this area. Today, you're seeing a 3.1 being mentioned here. A total of 17 earthquakes hit here. The biggest was a 4.25, 4.27. That's a pretty good sized earthquake, guys. Now, what do we know about swarms of quakes? Can anybody tell me or remind me what we know when we see swarms of earthquakes happening? Anybody know? What usually happens when we get these earthquakes swarming? When we have swarming earthquakes, guys, it usually means that there's a larger, more shallow earthquake coming. When we have these kinds of swarms of earthquakes like this that come out of nowhere, usually it means there's going to be a larger, shallow earthquake. Yes, these were fairly shallow, but there's maybe a larger earthquake coming from these swarms. If we just 1, 2, 3, 4 earthquakes, it would be something different. But this is a very large swarm of earthquakes. So folks, we need to keep our eyes peeled and our ears to the grindstone to see what we see and see what we hear. This could be the coming of a much larger earthquake. Now, with that said, This is basically, and actually this is further west than what we had about 4 years ago. 3 years ago, I'm sorry. 3 years ago. 3 years ago, December 24th, 2020, we had 4 7.0 earthquakes that hit basically the same area, but just maybe closer to shore. Just northwest of Vancouver Island. 4 7.0 earthquakes. 4 major earthquakes. All 4 earthquakes hitting the same area within an hour and a half. Within an hour and a half. My cohort in crime then, he and I were praying all over the place because we were scared that we may have a Cascadia megathrust earthquake on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. And we were praying like we've never prayed before, hoping that the Lord would spare this area of a Cascadia quake on Christmas Day. That's the one time I would not want it to happen, is on Christmas Day, knowing that in the future, on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, we would remember a major catastrophic event with people dying. I would not want that that memory to happen for Christmas. But folks, when we get these kinds of swarms of earthquakes, yes, it does usually mean that we're going to get a much larger earthquake. So we're just going to sit back here and see what happens probably within the next 3 days. I'm going to give it like 3 days. I don't think it could be much more than that. But we're going to give it 3 days and see if this holds true. It usually does. So folks, this could be scary. May Edwards says, wow, this is scary. It could be. Considering where it is on the Juan de Fuca Fault. Yes, it's almost an equal distance of numbers of quakes on either side of the Juan de Fuca Fault here. It's in the Cascadia region. In the same area where we had those 4 7.0 earthquakes years ago. It could still happen. It could still happen. Now, I'm hoping, and oh yes, I'm praying that it does not happen. I am praying and praying and praying. I spent about an hour or so today on my knees, hoping and praying that that is not going to happen. We have a lot of earthquakes happening around our earth in a lot of diverse places. When that happens, that usually means that we have some trouble somewhere. There's an old song that was part of a musical years ago called 74 Trombones Made the Big Parade. The musical was Music Man. I'm hoping we don't have 7 major earthquakes. Ray Spur says, can I say that it's fault slipping ever so slightly? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Let me show you something else while I'm here. At least I hope I still have this. I think I put it up here. I hope I did anyway. Maybe I did. No, here it is. Folks, this is from yesterday. These are the slow slip tremors that the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network tells us about. These are the slow slip tremors that the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network tells us about. But they never tell us about all of them. There are slow slip tremors happening up and down the entire west coast of Northern California, Oregon, and Washington. You can see the earthquakes over here in Washington to the north, south of Seattle. You can see this swarm of earthquakes in Northern California, around Shasta and Lassen. That's quite a swarm of slow slip quakes. We're going to be monitoring this. We'll be coming on the air tomorrow night and give you our findings of what we see happening here in the Pacific Northwest. There's a lot more to the story than just this. Okay? Let me show you something else. Where'd it go? Okay, I want to show you this. And someone might ask why. Oh, it's just a small earthquake at Mount St. Helens. Just a small earthquake. Folks, I want to ask you a question. Did USGS put this on the USGS map? No. The EMSC did. This map shows it to be the EMSC. They labeled it 39 kilometers northeast of Amboy, Washington. Guess where it's at? It's at Mount St. Helens. It's not anything 39 kilometers east, southeast of northeast of Amboy, Washington. Agencies, tell us the truth where these earthquakes are hitting. Don't cover it up. Don't tell us it's 39 miles away from where it's at. Tell us where it's at. If it's at a volcano, tell us. We're big kids. We can take the truth. We can understand and take the truth. Stop telling us where it's not at. It's nowhere even close to Amboy, Washington. This is at Mount St. Helens. My gosh. USGS is not the only one that tells people that. And quite frankly, I'm tired of it. Be honest with where these quakes are happening. This is insane. This is insane. Now, just to inject a little levity into tonight's program, because most of tonight's program is pretty serious. And no, this is not my dog, although I got a kick out of it. My emotional support dog, after spending a day with me, smoking a cigarette and having a Bud Light. I wouldn't even have a Bud Light in my house. That woke company can go bankrupt for all I care. But this would figure. I've had one of those days today. That's why I wanted to share it with you, to inject a little levity in this situation. It's been one of those days. Like I said, my phone started ringing at 7 a.m. or 9 a.m. this morning. Now, one of the things I want to talk to you about is this man right here. Everybody ought to know who he is. Hunter Biden today was indicted on felony gun charges. He faces up to 25 years in federal prison. Special Counsel David Weiss has secured an indictment against Hunter Biden on 3 counts of felony gun charges. Court documents show that a grand jury indicted Biden on 2 felony charges for allegedly lying on an ATF form. ATF form, what is that? The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. They ought to say ATFE, because now they also include explosive. But when Hunter Biden went into a gun store to fill out what they call a DRO, which is a federal form that you have to fill out, and it requires you to be truthful about your background. But when he went in to purchase that Colt Cobra revolver in October 2018, he was not truthful on the form. Okay? The third count that Hunter Biden faces, or allegedly faces, is illegal possession of a firearm and being the user of illegal narcotics. Illegally possessing a firearm while being the user of unlawful narcotics. That's the third charge. If convicted, Hunter Biden faces a maximum sentence of 25 years in federal penitentiary. Last week, Weiss filed court documents indicating that an indictment was forthcoming. Today, it came out. That itself was significant news today, because less than 3 months ago, Weiss announced a sweetheart deal on a plea deal for other things for the first son. That deal included a pretrial diversion agreement with Biden for the gun charge. That agreement would have allowed Hunter to avoid prosecution if he abided by its stipulations. Well, guess what? Hunter Biden is going to be singing a song from prison. That deal fell apart in late July when a federal judge questioned the constitutionality and the unusual nature of the deal, which included a broad immunity agreement. A broad immunity agreement giving him complete and absolute immunity for further prosecution on other charges. What makes this indictment significant is that it encompasses both crimes that Biden allegedly committed. Okay? So this is another big deal. Now, I want to go from here and talk about another crime that has been committed. This crime that was committed by Hunter's daddy, Joe. Hunter's daddy has committed more crimes than I want to think about. Okay. This particular story is a very interesting story. And why so? Why do you think this is such an interesting story? Where do you think I'm going with this? Okay? This story says that the White House urged the press to suppress coverage of the GOP charges against President Biden. Right here. It shows the URL for Sun Times. You can go to that URL after this show is complete. The White House urged the press to suppress coverage of GOP charges against Biden. The White House efforts to direct coverage of the upcoming impeachment charges comes just days after an appeals court chastised the Biden administration for suppressing information. Just days after Biden got his hand slapped for suppressing information. You can ask, what other information has he suppressed? Do you want me to tell you what other information he's suppressed? Folks, he has told Facebook, he and his people have told Twitter, YouTube, and other social media companies to not allow anyone to talk about Biden in a negative manner. And we have seen action taken upon or taken against people for talking about Biden in any way, shape, or form. Now, guys, those of you that have been with me for the last 4 years, you've seen what happened to me. About 6 times I was taken off the air. This last time, supposedly a hacker did it. But I've lost 3.5 years of work from that other channel. They've suppressed me. They've concealed evidence, because I was talking about the evidence. They've done just about everything they can from me, to do to me. Every time they took me off the air, they also fined me over $100 each time. One time they took me down for 1 week. The second time they took me down for 2 weeks. After that, every time they took me down, it was a month, threatening to take me down permanently. So this is the kind of thing that's been happening to a lot of people. A lot of people. Because the White House has been telling the social media people, don't let it happen. We all know what's happened on Facebook. Facebook hired a bunch of what they call fact checkers. They're not fact checkers. They don't check anything. They just see something come up that they don't like, and they say, boom, you're gone. They'll either take you down for a week or a month or whatever, and then if you're good, they might let you stay up a little longer next time. But if you even breathe wrong, they'll take you down again. And they'll delete your Facebook page. White House efforts to direct coverage of the upcoming impeachment comes just days after an appeals court chastised the Biden administration for attempting to suppress speech on social media platforms. Unreal. Hurricane Heather said they just knocked her off again. She had to come back. Heather, it happened, I believe, last night and the night before. I'm sorry. But these people have no gall. They don't care. Fantasy Dog just gave us another $10 super chat. Thank you so much. Support Ron. We seriously need this dude. Well, thank you. I need you guys too, and I appreciate your love and support of what we're doing. But folks, Biden is trying to get away with more guff. He and his administration, and it's not just Biden, that poor old codger that can't even hold 4 sentences together. His administrators are keeping him as president. Noble Frog just gave us another $10 super chat. Thank you so much. God bless you so much. I want you to know how much I appreciate each and every one of you. You guys are great. You really are. You guys are what keeps me going here, literally. I love each and every one of you guys. my family here. You're what keeps me going. But anyway, Biden and his cronies think that they can just do whatever they want. Yesterday, Biden was giving a speech, and he could not hold sentences together. He was rambling. And all of a sudden, one of his aides handed him some cards. And one of the press's cameras zoomed in on those cards. And on those cheat cards, or what I call a cheat sheet, yes, I've had my own notes on 3x5 cards before when I'm giving a speech or a talk to a group or whatever it is. Okay? Been there, done that. In this case, his administrators gave him some cheat cards with the speech written on it. Biden did not even pay attention to the cards and continued to rattle on about something totally unrelated. I saw it. Finally, one of his aides led him off to the side and ushered him off the stage. That poor guy can't even get anywhere. He can't even do anything. It's his administration that's pulling the strings on the puppet. It's unreal. Fantasy Dog, thank you for that $5 super chat. You guys are doing it all. I appreciate it. The White House is still continuing to urge the press to suppress the coverage of the GOP charges against Biden. And as you know, the House of Representatives yesterday also said that they're going to prefer charges against Biden for what he's done to the United States. They're going after him to impeach him. But the White House still doesn't care what the judges did to them. Are they going to fine the President of the United States or his administration, or try to hold him or them accountable for what they do? I don't know how they can do it, but maybe there is a judge that could hold this administration accountable for what they do. White House continues to press and suppress coverage of the GOP charges against Biden. White House efforts to direct coverage of the upcoming impeachment come just a day after the appeals court slapped his hands. Crazy. Richard Lyle just gave us another $10 super chat. Thanks, Richard. God bless you. Richard's a longtime supporter and member of our EMA family and dear friend. Thank you, Richard. God bless you. But White House efforts to direct coverage of the upcoming impeachment comes just days after Biden got his hand slapped. And the appeals court chastised his administration for attempting to suppress speech on social media accounts. President Biden at North America's Building Trades Union National Legislative Conference, April 25th this year, the same White House that was slapped down last week by the federal appeals court for meddling in the content moderation policies of social media networks, sent a letter yesterday to the heads of most major American press outlets, demanding, not even suggesting, but demanding that the American press outlets suppress coverage of the House of Representatives charges against him and the Biden family with the appropriate scrutiny during their coverage of the upcoming impeachment hearings in Congress. So they don't want the press to talk about the Biden crime family. They don't want the press talking about the impeachment. I wonder what that judge is going to do now. Okay? That's going to be interesting. That's going to be a very interesting situation. Okay. In a memo directed at the national leadership of America's news organizations, a spokesman for the White House counsel's office, Ian Sams, remember Ian Sams? I talked about him last night, didn't I? And I faced off with him on Twitter and got my hand slapped by the government. Ian Sams is a special advisor to President Biden. In a memo directed at the national leadership of America's news organizations, a spokesman for the White House, Ian Sams, says it's time for the media to do more to scrutinize House Republicans' demonstrably false claims that they're basing an impeachment stunt on, describing impeachment as a grave, rare, and historic matter. He urged the outlets to avoid reporting on the process of the impeachment and instead focus on the substance of the allegations against President Biden. Covering impeachment as a process story, Republicans say X, and the White House says Y. It's a disservice to the American public who relies on the independent press to hold those accountable that are in power. Mr. Sams says in the modern media environment where everyday liars and hucksters peddle disinformation and lies everywhere from Facebook to Fox, process stories that fail to unpack the illegitimacy of the claims on which the Republicans are basing all their actions only to serve to generate confusion and put false premise in people's feeds and obscure the truth. That's the special advisor to President Biden, making it seem like the American public can't think for themselves and urging the media not to give us the information we deserve. What does this sound like? This sounds like World War II. This sounds like what the Nazi Party did. This sounds like Russia. How many of you have been alive to see the Russian press? And they would tell one story, and then we'd find out another story exactly opposite of what their government had said. Pravda. Their news agency in Russia was called Pravda. And we saw things happen then. Now it's happening in our own country. It's happening all over the world. They don't want the truth to come out about anything. Mr. Sand's memo yesterday is accompanied, like I said, by a 14-page dossier. Where have we heard that word before? A 14-page dossier aimed at debunking claims against the president that were leveled by Republicans in Congress. Guess what? I read that dossier, and it's lie after lie after lie. Sams and his advisors that advise Biden have nothing but lies in that dossier. And I'm sure the press saw that. 14 pages of lies. There was not one truth amongst all the lies. I read it. Okay? But Sam says, oh, these allegations have been debunked now. They're not true. Oh, they're only not true because Mr. Sam says that. Okay? Mr. Sams is also trying to refute the witnesses that have come to the Congress to tell everyone what happened with Biden. They're trying to debunk the witnesses. They're trying to debunk the testimony. the financial records that they have obtained, and independent reporting. Sam says it's clear that this investigation is all politics and no evidence. That's what Biden and his team would have us believe. It's all politics and no evidence. There is plenty of evidence around here. The White House efforts to direct coverage of the upcoming impeachment comes days after the appeals court says, oh, no, you don't. You can't pull that crap anymore. You can't censure people. And that's what they've been doing, censoring all of us. Oh, you can't see this because we don't want you to. Okay? The court issued a 74-page unsigned opinion. A 74-page story to tell Biden and his cronies to back off. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in New Orleans upheld the lower court ruling that said officials from the White House, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the FBI, the Surgeon General's office, among others, coerced and threatened employees of social media networks such as Facebook and Twitter, now known as X, in an effort to tamp down content that ran afoul of the government policy at the time. So if the government doesn't agree with it, it's basically wrong. Officials via both private and public channels asked the platforms to remove content, which is what they did, and press them to change their moderation policies and threaten them directly. The Biden administration threatened the social media platforms directly and indirectly, with legal consequences if the networks and the platforms did not comply. The judge wrote, quote, and it worked. The unrelenting pressure forced the platforms to act and take down users' content, mine included. Evidence of the case is Missouri versus Biden. Someone sued Biden. You can't sue the government, by the way. Evidence in the case was Missouri versus Biden. Suggests that the government has engaged in year-long pressure campaigns designed to ensnare that the censorship aligned with the government's preferred viewpoints. The opinion says that campaign, it says, was a clear violation of the plaintiffs, the states of Missouri and Louisiana, and a handful of scientists skeptical of America's COVID policies, who were silenced by the platforms. First Amendment rights. Silence the platform's First Amendment rights. You all saw it. I saw it. It happened to me. The court ruled it is true that the officials have an interest in engaging the social media companies, including on issues such as misinformation and election interference. But the government is not permitted to advance these interests to the extent that it engages viewpoint suppression. They cannot engage viewpoint suppression any longer. The Department of Justice has not said, and this is coming from Eric Garland, the Attorney General. The DOJ has not said whether it intends to appeal the court's rulings, which upheld portions of a lower court's ruling that enjoins administration officials from contacting social media platforms for the sincere purpose of urging, encouraging, pressuring, and inducing any manner of the removal, deletion, suppression, or reduction of content containing protected free speech to the Supreme Court. This may go to the United States Supreme Court. And there's a whole other side to this entire story when it goes to the Supreme Court. That's going to be a total different story. And I will be talking about that in the days to come. A whole different story that's going to go to the Supreme Court. Now, I'm going to talk to you now about a court case of a man who threatened to assassinate AOC, Congresswoman AOC, and led the case to the Supreme Court to rule that Trump was wrongfully charged. Could the case of this man who threatened to assassinate AOC lead the Supreme Court to rule that Trump was wrongfully charged? An opinion to the U.S. Supreme Court raises the possibility that the 9 Supreme Court justices, not Jack Smith, not Fannie Willis, will determine Trump's fate. The U.S. Supreme Court could determine Trump's fate, not those attorney generals that think that they can get away with murder. A petition to the Supreme Court asking that the justices bar prosecutors from using what has become a favored charging tool in respect of a January 6th threat to upend hundreds of cases, including President Trump's. An invitation for the High Court to take up a ruling that could, in passant, reshape one of the biggest law enforcement efforts in American history, raises the possibility that Mr. Trump's fate could be decided by the 9 Supreme Court justices. Even as the constitutional contempt over Mr. Trump's qualification for office appears ticketed for the Supreme Court, efforts to secure intervention on his criminal charges are underway. The newest petition for what they call certiorari, and I'm going to attempt to explain certiorari in a minute, but the newest petition for certiorari, or Supreme Court review, that's my own way to put this, certiorari is a Supreme Court review, comes in the case of Garrett Miller, who pled guilty to 11 crimes related to activities on January 6, 2021. It asks the judge to neuter one of those obstruction of an official proceeding. The statute was enhanced as a provision of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which sought to clamp down on financial misconduct. In addition to Sarbanes-Oxley, Miller's rap sheet includes assaulting police officers, threats to injure or kidnap. He threatened on social media to assassinate Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Why, I can't talk. He threatened to assassinate Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I still can't say it all. Go figure. Anyway, he tried to assassinate her. And he had other species of disorderly conduct as well. He was sentenced to 38 months in prison after calling his own behavior disgusting and a complete embarrassment. So this guy knew that he did wrong, or he said that anyway. The law brought Miller to the High Court. Sarbanes-Oxley was passed after the accounting scandals related to WorldCom and Enron. Remember Enron? And it created the crime of corruptly obstructing, influencing, or impeding an official proceeding, or attempting to do so. It's attractive to prosecutors because it carries a maximum prison sentence of 20 years behind bars. That provision is I want to give you the whole law here. The provision, United States Code, USC, Title 18, Section 1512C, makes it a crime to corruptly tamper with evidence for use in an official proceeding or otherwise obstruct that proceeding. Federal judges have evinced skepticism, though, that this has not stopped Special Counsel Jack Smith from using the charge against Trump. One of 4 January 6 counts faced by the 45th president. Jack Smith has charged President Trump with that section. And that's probably why President Trump will skip out of that. He'll skip out of Georgia because President Trump has not violated any law, and Fannie Willis has. Now, in charging more than 300 defendants for violating Sarbanes-Oxley, the Department of Justice is asking judges and juries to stretch to find that effort to disrupt the certification of the electoral vote was the kind of interference contemplated by the statute. That's a long stretch. Miller warns that the vagueness inherent in this new crime against Congress would invite, has perhaps already invited, the politicization of criminal justice. That's exactly what the Biden administration has done. Politicized criminal justice. They have locked up 42 people from January 6th. Only one of them has faced a jury. The rest have been just locked up without ever seeing a jury or a judge. That's also against the law. Anybody arrested is supposed to have the access to a swift, free trial. And those 42 members of our society have not gotten that. Because the DOJ, Derek Garland, does not intend on obeying the law himself. A district court judge at the District of Columbia, Carl Nichols, has held that the use of Sarbanes-Oxley to prosecute January 6 rioters was a statutory bridge too far and a poor fit for what transpired on that day at the Capitol. Remember me saying yesterday, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit? Remember OJ? That's the same thing we're talking about here. It's a poor fit. That case was brought about by 3 defendants, Miller among them. Edward Jacob Lang has already petitioned the Supreme Court on the same score. A third, Jacob Fisher, could soon petition for writ of certiorari. Judge Nichols, though, was overturned by a fractured panel of writers of the District of Columbia Circuit Court of the U.S. Court of Appeals, which upheld the charge. In dissent, Judge Gregory Katsas found that the government's reading makes Section USC Title 18, Section 1512C unconstitutional, implausibly broad, and unconstitutional in a significant number of its applications. He found prosecutors' position hard to reconcile with the structure and history of Section 1512. Miller points to the national political salience of the issues raised here, and embodied in Mr. Trump, being charged under the same theory of liability that the government has filed against him, and hundreds of others. He adds that the novel crime could interfere with, or at least have a chilling effect on, the basic mechanics of government. The basic mechanics of government. Politics. the chilling work of lobbyists and policy advocates. That work is constitutionally protected by the Petition Clause of the First Amendment, which protects the right of the people to peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. And yet this government, this Biden administration, including Attorney General Garland, has violated our rights and continues to do so, continuing to tell the social media platforms to censor all of our speech. The District of Columbia District Court has held that the grounds of the Capitol, where the January 6th riot supposedly erupted, is also where the right to protest exists in its most pristine and classic form. Miller's petition acknowledges, though, that the crimes of assault, property destruction, disorderly conduct meant the events of January 6th were less than pristine. At Miller's sentencing, his attorney Clint Borden maintained that although Garrett is fully responsible for his individual acts that day, his actions and the actions of many others were a product of rhetoric from a, quote, cult leader that has been yet to be brought to justice, in reference to Mr. Trump. If, though, the justices are persuaded by his argument that one of the charges against him is unconstitutional, before January 6th, no court had characterized political protest at the seat of government, however disorderly, as an obstruction of justice offense. Then hundreds of other defendants, including Mr. Trump, could well reap the rewards and walk away from all of this. Okay? That's why I wanted you to know this. That's why I want you to know this. Because Biden and his cronies have crossed the line. They have completely crossed the line here. I never would have thought that our government would do this. Now, let me tell you about another politician. We talked about her the last few days, because last Friday, a week from tomorrow, she came out and blocked the First Amendment and the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution in her state of New Mexico, in one of her counties. Today, a United States federal judge in Albuquerque has blocked New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham's effective suspension of the Second Amendment in the state. A judge, a federal judge, blocked Grisham's attempt to silence us and kept our guns away from us. This comes after both the New Mexico Attorney General, I talked to her, and other Democrat constitutional officers announced that they would be refusing to enforce Grisham's order. The Attorney General, when I spoke to her yesterday, did not tell me that. That the Attorney General and the Sheriff were not going to support the governor. She crossed the line. She herself is guilty of treason and should be arrested. She should not be allowed to hold the officer of governor of New Mexico any longer. I am calling for her resignation and her immediate arrest. I've been saying that for a week now. Regardless of whether the government will not let her get away with it, she still deserves to go to jail for what she's done. She cannot just assume the constitutional doesn't apply in her state. That is her biggest mistake. Right there. That is her biggest mistake. Now, before I go on to three other people here, I want to talk about Maui. I haven't talked about Maui in the last couple days, but I want to show you this. This is a video that I obtained that's talking turkey about what's going on over in Maui.
Hello everyone, I'm Tracy and thank you for tuning in today. So I have a lot of updates to share with you guys, and I'll kind of give you an idea. I'm going to follow up with some of the developments about the governor and what he's been saying about BJ Penn. I have a little more information I dug up on John Pelletier, the police chief, and a little bit about, I'll talk about this first. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I don't understand how these numbers came to be, but most recently they changed the number of missing people to 66. So in the very beginning, there were kind of numbers going around 2,000 to 3,000. They narrowed it down to about 1,000, and then they said it was 388, and now it's down to 66. However, the death toll is still at 115. So I simply don't know how they came up with this. I don't know if they're pulling numbers out of a hat or something, because I find it hard to believe they found that many people missing that were still alive. You know, even from 1,000 to 66. At least I haven't heard of any personal stories of people being found after being missing, but that is the official story. I wanted to follow up also on the meeting that Senator Kurt Favela requested with Governor Green. So I played the clip in my previous video. He is trying to disband Governor Green's Build Back Better development project that he's been doing in Honolulu. So they showed up, him and his supporters went to the governor's office. I thought it was a scheduled meeting, but it turned out it was more of an impromptu, show up and try to get a meeting. So Governor Green was actually on Maui at the time, so they didn't get to meet with him. It was just a case of bad timing. But they did get granted a meeting with the lieutenant governor, and they sat down with her for a while, and they presented her with the proposal of what they wanted. So in a nutshell, they want him to disband what he's doing with the development of Lahaina and move those meetings to Lahaina and include people that are from Lahaina. So I think if you're watching this, that is probably what you want as well, but it doesn't seem like the governor wants that. But he now officially has a document mapping out at least what Senator Favela wants, and he represents, I would say, the majority of people on Maui at least. So I did want to let you guys know. And a little bit more about Governor Green. I did find a speech he made in July 12th of this year. It was a high-level forum hosted by the UN. It was in New York, I believe. And I'll show you the clip of what he says about these smart cities. Or
generations and even centuries ago, thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people lived in Hawaii and had a sustainable culture for food. And that was something that we still recognize. To that end, we have done some things, and we hope to be able to share this much more in time. One is the Aloha Plus Challenge, which is a data-driven approach which we can share with our states and with anyone who feels that it would be helpful to track the SDGs, to make sure that we embed them in all of our policies.
Well, Governor Green envisions Hawaii one day being a bridge to other nations as a sustainable ally.
And then I do want to touch on the public statements being released about Nani Medeiros' resignation. I talked about it in my last video. So she was the chief housing director in charge of this new development plan, and she resigned, and the governor publicly has said that it was because she was being bullied and treated unfairly. And then he singles out BJ Penn as the reason for her resignation. He says, I'll tell you exactly. And for those of you a little less familiar, BJ Penn is a MMA fighter. He doesn't fight anymore, but he was probably in his prime in like the early 2000s, 2005, 6, 7, 8. He had a lot of high profile fights during that time. I did watch MMA at that time. And then now he's more of an activist, and he did run for governor on the Republican side last year, but lost. But this is what Governor Green said about BJ Penn. The bullying tactics with obvious violent undertones employed by Mr. Penn and his followers have no place in Hawaii and are absolutely contrary to our spirit of aloha for others. I won't tolerate anyone from my team or anyone in our state being treated this way. It is despicable. So he's probably referring to the speech that BJ Penn made at the housing meeting that Governor Green left, and left Nani kind of as the person in charge. And so BJ expressed his opinion, and I highly doubt it was his intention to get her to resign. I don't think that was even on his mind. And I think I could tell he was angry that the governor wasn't brave enough to show his face at that meeting, because he wanted to talk to him, and he wanted to tell the governor exactly how he feels, and then he ended up leaving. So I think his anger, if anyone, was aimed towards the governor, and Nani was the person, the head person there, so she ended up getting that speech from him.
Resigned, actually. That was the last thing that I would have ever expected.
A day after the state's housing officer resigned, BJ Penn told us he doesn't condone bullying and is all about aloha.
That's terrible to hear anything that she got threatened, and I want anybody out there to know, if anybody was involved doing that, I don't condone that. I'm 100% against that.
Medeiros is part of the Build Beyond Barriers group created to fast-track affordable housing projects under a state emergency proclamation signed by Governor Josh Green.
Me and Nani, we don't know each other personally, but I hear from everybody that she's just such a nice person and good person, and she kind of just got pushed in that position.
The governor personally blasted Penn for what he called bullying tactics in the wake of the resignation. But Penn says he's being falsely accused.
That's really wrong to say that and to point at me and to say that he's not going to tolerate that. It almost kind of feels like some kind of Donald Trump type of thing where they go after somebody.
And he wants to make amends with Medeiros.
Hey, Nani, when I get to see you again, I would love to, just apologize if anyone did come up to you and do anything like that, or did anything to your child or husband or any of that stuff. So I just want to make everything good right now. So, right on, Nani.
I don't feel like it was violent at all. I don't know what happened off camera, but definitely what I saw him say was not violent or threatening. That's just my opinion. All right, so now I'm going to move on to John Pelletier, the police chief. And I've been talking about him through this whole story. I found some news clippings of complaints that were made against him since he became chief at the Maui Police Department. So he was there. He started in November of 2021, and these complaints were made about 7 months after, so the middle of last year. And he had 7 official complaints, and it was mainly because of the stress that the employees were put under under Pelletier's management, and it was unprecedented. One of the complaints was he cussed out a female in front of people and a number of things. I'll play some testimony from a former lieutenant.
Maui Police Chief John Pelletier has been on the job for about 7 months now and has racked up 7 official work environment complaints. The employees who filed the grievances don't want to speak out because of fear of retaliation, but former ranking officers speaking on their behalf tell me one involves a woman who was cursed at during a meeting, and that working under Pelletier has led her and several others to seek help from psychiatrists and anxiety medication.
It was no leadership, it was a dictatorship.
Former Maui Police Department Lieutenant William Hankins had more than 30 years of service under his belt. Hankins worked under 5 different chiefs, but says he retired early because of Pelletier, alleging the recently installed head created what he calls a hostile and toxic work environment from the very first meeting.
Telling the command staff that if you don't agree with him and support him, he's going to fillet you.
People walking around on eggshells, nobody wants to say anything.
After 28 years in the force, former Assistant Chief Clyde Holokai also retired early because of Pelletier's management. Holokai and Hankins agree the internal friction at MPD is unprecedented. For Holokai, he believes the stress of working under Pelletier even took a physical toll on him.
In about 2 months, I lost about 15 to 20 pounds working under him.
Hearing the complaints from employees at MPD, the police union surveyed 60% of its personnel back in April, with a third of them reporting they are thinking of leaving within the next 2 years, many citing morale as a top reason for considering a departure. The Maui Police Department is already 100 officers short.
The results were quite alarming.
Workers surveyed also gave Pelletier poor scores on 12 out of 13 categories. One question asks whether the chief fosters strong morale, with most responding not very well or not well at all. The police union is waiting on the findings of the complaint probes to determine next steps.
Okay, I'm going to stop it there. I appreciate this lady's attempt to put out the information. She's done an awesome job. I want to thank her for that. I've got a link to her channel below this presentation tonight down in our program description. I appreciate her very much. She's been honest and she's a great news reporter. Okay? Now I've got one more thing to talk about here. Well, I'm still monitoring Hurricane Lee that's in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, the North Atlantic. We're still monitoring that. It's not going away. It has not moved much. I'm going to talk more about that tomorrow night, but it still has not moved as much. They thought by now it would be approaching Maine on its way up into Canada. It's not even gotten close. Okay? Belzil is saying, wondering where Don P has been. Haven't seen him around. Hurricane Heather says Don's dealing with some personal issues. He'll be back. I've been told what those personal issues are. I spoke with Don Patoka just a couple days ago. I know him and his wife intimately. They attended the same church I went to. They were good friends of ours. Don Patoka was one of the greatest friends a person could have. Don and I have been very close throughout years. It's been years now. A lot of years. Don is trying to take care of his wife. She is up in years. She's having some very serious health issues. They took her to one hospital and she was medically transferred to the University of Utah Hospital in northwest Salt Lake. That's where she is right now. Don said that he would keep me updated by the end of this week. I probably will call him or he'll call me by tomorrow. I support he and his wife and what he's doing to help her. She was in very dire circumstance. Don has been taking care of her for a very long time. Both he and his wife and their health has been guarded during the past few years. His wife has been on oxygen for a very long time now, similar to what I am. Don, however, thought he might have to be on oxygen, and he's fighting having to be on oxygen. He said to me the other day in kind of a laughing tone that he may have to go to oxygen whether he wants to or not. But that is what Don and his wife are doing. He's probably with his wife right now at the University of Utah Hospital. Our prayers and blessings go to he and his wife. They're both wonderful, wonderful people. Whenever I'd ever talked to Don when his wife wasn't around, Don said that she often spoke about my wife and how wonderful she was. Don's wife is an awesome lady. She's always thinking about someone else and how she can help them. She lets everyone know how she loves them. And so our prayers go out to her as well. Hurricane Heather says her daughter was born in that hospital. That's cool. Anyway, guys, I have one other thing that I want to talk about. Yesterday, Glenn Beck was on the air. He was speaking with Texas Governor Abbott. I'm going to play a portion of that talk that they had on the air on the Glenn Beck Show. This is also linked on in our program description below this program here tonight.
To New York, where the New York PD ordered to slash overtime spending now to cover the cost of the migrant crisis. Huh. Well, that's interesting. They apparently are collapsing with about 100,000 illegals coming to Manhattan. Now, that's what they've received. They've gotten about 10,000 of those on a bus from Texas, thanks to our governor, Greg Abbott. Greg Abbott has sent the 10,000 in, and that is enough to collapse New York, apparently. But the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands here in Texas, nobody seems to care about. Well, there's some controversy going on because now the government is saying that they might pass a rule that if you come in and cross in Texas, you got to stay in Texas. Governor Greg Abbott is with us now from the great state of Texas. I have to tell you, Governor, busing people from New York City, I loved it from the get-go, but I didn't think it would do much other than like a stunt, kind of like it ended up with Governor DeSantis in Florida with Martha's Vineyard. It felt good for a day, but didn't change anything. This is the biggest game-changing border policy I have ever seen in almost 50 years of broadcast. Thank you.
Well, of course, and it's not just what's going on with Mayor Adams in New York. Look at Lori Lightfoot in Chicago.
Yep.
Look at what's going on with Karen Bass out in Los Angeles. Listen, they're all reacting the same thing, or the same way. They are all sanctuary cities. They've all told the world, we want your tired, your poor, your illegal immigrants, and we want them here. We're going to provide food and lodging for them. And then when they actually have to live up to these liberal promises they made, they collapse like a cheap tent. Let me tell you something. There's no way that the mayor of New York would be able to last a week in the state of Texas dealing with what we have to deal with. It's shameful the way they act. It's crazy the kinds of things they say. But it is time for America to have to share this burden that Texas has had to deal with.
How many do we have here in Texas now? I mean, I know he can't handle the 10,000 from Texas. There are towns in Texas that are getting at least 10,000, a day or a week. How many are actually here in Texas?
Well, first, I'll tell you that the catalyst for this busing operation actually wasn't to try to put burdens on New York. It was actually to try to help out those small communities on the border. the Del Rios, the Eagle Passes, the communities that the Border Patrol were dropping these illegal immigrants off. And we said, there's no way that we're going to be able to deal with this. And so we began to put them on buses, initially going to Washington, D.C., and eventually New York, et cetera. But my point is that these illegal immigrants do not stay in Texas very long at all, a day, maybe 2 days. And then they are put on buses and bussed out to other areas across the country. That's what Texas is doing. In addition to what Texas is doing, in far greater numbers, the Biden administration is doing the exact same thing. So my point, Glenn, is that they're actually not staying in Texas very long at all.
So the Biden administration, how many are being shipped out from this just one border state to go elsewhere?
I can give you percentages. I don't have the precise number. The percentages would be, in the 90% range, 95% range.
Oh my gosh!
There's not very many that are staying in Texas, and that is what is leading to the extraordinary volume that New York is dealing with, that Massachusetts is dealing with, that Illinois and Chicago are dealing with, that California is dealing with, et cetera.
So the Biden administration last week said that they were considering making sure that if you cross into Texas, you have to stay in Texas. If they did that, it feels like they're specifically, the federal government is specifically targeting Texas. Is that payback for what you and Paxton have put them through in the Supreme Court? Is that to change us blue? Is it to break our backs financially? Why this seeming vendetta against Texas?
Part of it, Glenn, does seem to be payback, and it's not just because of the busing operations. It's because what Texas has done, we have taken over operational control of the border and actually repelled or pushed back into Mexico people who were trying to cross illegally. We have been on federal land where we built these concertina razor wire barriers. It was the National Guard that did it. They build the barriers, and the National Guard guards it, and they force illegal immigrants to go back to Mexico. This is the only time in American history when anything like that has happened. And then, of course, you probably know about the buoys we put in the water and the marine barrier, and the Biden administration considers all of that to be evil when all Texas is really doing is protecting our own border. So my point in telling you that is, yes, the Biden administration has a vendetta against the state of Texas. But let me put it this way. The president is right in thinking that these migrants have to stay somewhere as opposed to going all across the country. He just got the location wrong.
Okay? Biden's got the location wrong. Okay? Why do you think that Biden has asked all of these people from all over the world to come here into the United States? Why do you think? It's to get him votes. It's to keep the Democrat Communist Party in line for years and years to come. Now, I have even more information in regards to this. Biden has taken Social Security and Medicare money to give to the illegal people. And I'm going to call them illegal. Because the way they came across, regardless of what Biden wants to call them, they came across in an unlawful fashion, which makes them illegal to be here. Biden has promised them at least $300 a week. The President of the United States has promised the illegals that came across our border and didn't stop and kept going. The President of the United States is giving them $300 a week to be here. Quite honestly, most people and I'm going to say most people, most U.S. citizens, not the rich, I'm not talking about them, but I'm talking about those citizens that are impoverished and living below the charity lines of our society. Those people are given $1,200 a month to stay here in the United States. They do not have to lift a doggone finger. They don't have to do anything for themselves. The U.S. government is giving them everything: a telephone, transportation, a place to live, and food. And $1,200 a month. Yeah. They've done it because they've gotten away with it. Reducing everybody else's Social Security and Medicare. Reduced our health care. Giving it to those illegals. I'm wanting to say about 70% of those illegals that are here are men. Military age men from 18 to 40. What do you think is really going on here? Those idiots that have come across are probably pretty smart. They've come across to take over this country. Men from all over the world. Ex-prisoners, or should I say former prisoners. Yes, there are those countries that let their prisoners out of jail that are now here in the United States. There are murderers and rapists and other criminals here as well. Yes, there's children here, and that's an entirely different story for another night. But the Communist Democrats have brought them in and fed them and clothed them and given them a place to live and given them money. So they don't have to lift a finger. All the Communist Democrats want is their vote in November. That's all. It's our privilege to be permanent citizens here in this country. It's our goal here for us to get those people removed from our country before it's too late. And I have a feeling it's already too late. There is a war brewing. There is a huge war brewing. Our lives are in danger. Not just our breathing lives, but our lives in general. The way we live, the places we can go, and the things that we can do. Our standard of living is going down the tubes. And pretty soon, it's going to be brother against brother, fighting to keep these bozos in line and drive them back to where they came from. I hope and pray that President Trump comes back and puts them back where they belong. Not in our country, but someplace else where they belong, where they came from. One more thing, and then I'll let you guys go. Some people have been talking about the FCC lately and the Biden administration. And the FCC coming together to put an EAS message out on our radios and our televisions and our cell phones. An EAS message. They're saying that on October 4th, this next month, and now it's September 14th. So folks, we're only 2 weeks away from this. 2 weeks away tops. And yes, I have been very critical and not said a word positive one about what these people at FEMA and the FCC have been doing. Because so far what they've said that they're going to do has not happened. And it still may not happen. On October 4th, we are supposed to be seeing an EAS message. And it's supposed to last on cell phones and radios and televisions 30 minutes. It's supposed to be lasting 30 minutes, guys. We don't know why. We haven't been told. But they are saying that they have a message for us on October 4th. Do we know what's going to be said? No. We have no way of getting that information because it's, I believe, in my own opinion, that they're holding it in front of us. October 4th, you're going to be seeing this picture of me about a special presentation of EAS. Folks, I don't want to even be a part of it. But in my position as an emergency manager, I have to address this. I want to make sure that everybody's protected. And as we go through this, and as we get closer to October 4th, I'll be trying to gather information for you about what's going on. It could be something that the Biden administration has been coming up with that we may or may not want to hear. I'm just giving you fair warning. Okay? I'm giving you fair warning now. Do I like it? No. I do not. But I am telling you it's coming. Those of you that can, tomorrow, I'm going to show you a way to keep the government from tracking your cell phone, even during the time that this EAS has been activated. I will show you how to protect your phone so they do not have a way to access your phone to give you that information. This phone right here, you can shut it off. You can shut it off. I have not shut off my phone in a while now. But shutting it off no longer does any good, because they can turn it back on automatically, remotely. They have the capability to turn these phones on remotely. They have the capability not just to turn them on, but to monitor you from the camera on your phone. Whether you want to have that or not. Okay? At night, I know that. But at night, I have a guard that I place on my phone right here, right across the top where that camera is. So if they turn my camera on in the middle of the night, they will not be able to access any information from me through that camera. As we get closer to October 4th, the information I'm going to give you tomorrow, I'm going to start doing almost immediately to protect my phone from being intercepted by the government. They already have enough information on me they can rail me. Heaven forbid they do it. every time, every year, in fact, it was more than every year, it was every quarter, every 3 months, I had to submit fingerprints every time I had to do a gun qualification. I had to submit my fingerprints for a background check to do my quarterly weapons qualification as a police officer. So they have plenty of my fingerprints all over. They have my mugshot all over. So guys, yeah, they can track me. They know exactly where I am right now. They see me on the air right now. They know I'm here. But I'm going to try to help you. Please, folks, tomorrow, bring your friends and your entire family here to this program tomorrow night. Share this program widely, because I'm going to give you information on how you can protect yourself. This is going to be vital in the coming weeks and even months. You don't want the government knowing everything about you. Where you're going, where you're coming from, what you're doing any time during the day or night. I was afraid when cell phones came out that this would happen. And now, some 28 years since cell phones came out. Yes, that's how long I've had a cell phone. That's how long I had a cell phone. And because the government couldn't afford to give us cell phones, they asked us to be able to use our phones to contact the captain from out in the field. Before that, we were having to go to a payphone and call the office on a regular basis, letting the office, meaning our lieutenants or captains, know what we were doing. Yes, the call would come out over the air, Officer Tyler, 1021. 10-4, 314. 314 was my call sign. So I had to go search for a telephone, put my money into the telephone to call the police station. I couldn't leave my patrol area. Very rarely did that ever happen. But folks, that's how long I've been doing this. They used my technology for their service. Or, shall I say, I got lucky enough to have technology to save my pennies and dimes and nickels that I used to call the police department to talk to my superiors. Maybe I was saving money, I don't know. But folks, this is what kind of malarkey that happens, and it continues to happen. But again, I want you to know what's happening. So tomorrow night we're going to be talking about how to protect ourselves from this EAS. I don't think I'm going to participate other than to possibly listen to TV or radio. That I can do. Because all I have to do is turn up the volume on my radio here.
In Virginia, at Bluefield, it was
my weather radio.
temperature of 61. It was partly cloudy.
Because this weather radio will also give me the information about the EAS. So I don't have to have them have my activity on my cell phone. I'm going to protect myself from that. They're not going to have access to me. I'm just not going to allow it. Now, there's something else here that I want to share with you. Isn't it interesting how I have all this data at my fingertips, and after I leave this particular data sheet where I was at, I have to go look for it again. I've already given you a lot of information tonight, and it's going to continue. Okay? In the past weeks and months and years, we've talked a lot about emergency weather radios. Weather radios can be used for a lot of other things, but besides just weather. If we go to war, or if the government comes to a point and they're going to give us information to try to protect ourselves, which could happen, they will be using this weather radio frequency.
Flows around 60. Southwest winds around 5 miles.
Okay. Here in my area, the station's 162.450. 162.450. That is a weather frequency here. It may be in your area as well, depending on where you're at. But these weather radios might help protect you, and even during hurricanes or tornadoes. So I am urging each of you to have one of these. I've told you that they have them at REI. They have them at BePrepared.com, Emergency Essentials. They have them at Target. They have them at Big Five. And I don't remember the name of the store right off the top of my head, but they sell outdoor equipment, and they even sell firearms at the store. I don't remember the store. I used to go into it a lot with Surgery. Surgery's one of my best friends, living in Salt Lake City, now lives in northern Utah with his family. But Surgery and I used to go to that store a lot. And yes, they have those AM, FM weather radios. You can get those, and in fact you can get one from 4 Patriots as well. The least expensive was like $19. It was a very good radio. You can get them from anywhere from even $14.99 all the way up to $50. This one here that I'm showing you here is a Midland radio. Midland is a great corporation. They've been around a lot of years. It's a good brand. Okay? Midland just sent out a code for 25% off their weather radios. 25% off their weather radios. The code is Weather25. Their website is https://midlandusa.com /collections/emergency prep. I've got this here. I put it out on the air here so you can see it. You can go back to this program and refer to it. I urge everybody to be able to get an emergency radio for yourselves and your family. Midland Radio Emergency Prep. Browse emergency radios and walkie-talkies from Midland Radio. Their collection makes it easy to stay connected and to receive alerts even without power. Now, I talked about these radios before as well. These are handy talkies. Okay? Notice the emblem on here. This is made by Midland. So I also have Midland radio equipment here. They have these handy talkies that have the FRS radios, the Family Radio Service radios that do not require a license to operate. This one has Family Radio Service channels, and it also has another one. 2 other different frequencies that require a radio license. General Mobile Radio Service license. Now, I have my own handheld here that looks like this. This is also a General Mobile Radio Service radio. 462.675 and 462.450. Those are the 2 frequencies this radio runs on. This is a higher powered radio than this one. Okay? I have to have a license to operate this, And the 2 frequencies that are on this one, I also have to have a license to operate on that one. My license, my radio license, is KAE 5531. KAE 5531. Right there. Okay? Just so you know, you can get a General Mobile Radio Service radio. You don't even have to take a test. All you have to do is pay a fee to get that license, and you can get it. Okay? Just so you know. Does anyone have any questions? Susie Fujinaga says she has a wind-up radio too. I do too, right here. I have several weather radios here. There's a reason. I don't have just one, I have several of them. Does anybody have any questions? I want to recognize NCWQ Explorer Rebecca here. We appreciate her being here in the chat as well. She's a great friend of mine. A great, great friend of mine. Okay? Anybody have any questions? JB Maps is here. Thank you, JB, for being here. I don't sometimes see you, and I wish I had. JB's been a long-time friend of the channel as well. I appreciate him. I appreciate each and every one of you. I love you. I really, really do. Okay, if you guys don't have any questions, NCWQ says, thanks, Ron. Sorry I've been off lately, sick, and then busy with stuff. I totally get that. I totally get that. Before I leave tonight, I want to leave you with the scripture. One verse. I was going to lengthen it out, but we're already running over time tonight. Rob52 says he has an FCC license. I do as well. Anyway, I want to leave you with one verse of scripture. This is coming from 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 23. And the very God of peace sanctify you wholly. And I pray, God, your Holy Spirit and soul and body be preserved blameless unto the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. Again, that is Paul speaking to the Thessalonians. That is the Apostle Paul even talking to us. When you're thinking of the scriptures, brothers and sisters, reckon the scriptures to yourself. Because the scriptures are to us as well. The scriptures apply to us as well. May God bless us all. May God be with us until we meet again. If anything else happens tonight, we will be back here on the radio, on last night was like the radio, a podcast, but we'll be right back here on the Emergency Management Associates Network tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. God be with you, and do know that I love you. God be with you until we meet again. Take care, everybody. Take care of each other. And don't ever forget to tell someone close to you that you love them. Good night, everybody.